All right, thank you all for joining us, and I would like to thank ATARC for inviting me to speak today. My name is Christian Williams, and I support the Wireless Mobility Solutions Program at GSA's Office of Information Technology category. I am fairly new to the wireless team at GSA, and so far the experience has been wonderful and rewarding. Since I started in this role in January of this year, I've been so impressed with the depth and breadth of this category. I know it sounds cliche to say wireless is the future, but never has that been more true than right now. As I see how many of you have joined for this virtual opportunity to connect with like-minded professionals, I know that together our future is full of opportunity. The information technology category at GSA supports 98% of federal agencies through the contracts we manage. This gives us an amazing opportunity to connect and work with agencies of all shapes and sizes with an incredibly varied set of missions and responsibilities. The telecommunications telecom subcategory, where I work, includes networks and infrastructure, mobile and wireless services, and SATCOM. Mobility continues to revolutionize the way we work and live. We rely more and more on technology for everything we do. From the federal government perspective, wireless is being adopted as a way to improve our workforce mission responsiveness to the country that we serve. Right now, a new generation of public servants who grew up with smartphones are now taking their oaths of office. Agencies must leverage mobile technology in new and innovative ways to improve their mission outcomes, especially during this time of teleworking. Telework is now a necessity both in government and the private sector. Ensuring an agency is postured to support a robust remote workforce can be complex and requires the agency to look at the capabilities needed from an enterprise perspective, all the way down to the individual user. An individual user's toolkit would require the proper hardware, laptops, mobile devices, peripherals, access to the network, hotspots and Wi-Fi capabilities, and the appropriate set of software, office tools, VPN, and applications. Our customers also rely on GSA to stay connected in the field. Examples of this is the CDC, which is able to gain access to more than 7,000 first responder capable wireless devices in order to support their domestic pandemic efforts across the country. Also, the SBA is currently administering hundreds of billions in relief funding for American workers and small businesses, and much of the work is being done remotely. So as you know, COVID-19 stay-at-home orders impacted not only our current workforce, but also new employees and contractors the government hopes to bring on board. In light of COVID-19, OPM released guidance for appointing and onboarding new employees. This represents an opportunity for optimized modernization across government that can provide benefits beyond these unprecedented times. For example, the federal government could explore remote identity proofing not only as a contingency solution, but an ultimate solution in times of the next emergency response. In this fiscal year, GSA will explore how to perform remote identity proofing for its over 2 million users in over 120 agencies. We will be exploring how we can use other authorities such as the Department of Motor Vehicles Real ID driver's license systems, the Bureau of Consular Affairs passport systems, to verify credentials virtually. Both of these systems have stringent proofing requirements, which is similarly used to issue PIV cards. Government agencies are also interested in researching the combined utilization of biometrics, facial recognition, fingerprints, iris scans, contextual identity, and zero trust models for remote identity proofing, just to name a few. Finally, a mobile workforce runs on cloud solutions, so cloud migration is a topic of major interest to our customers. Many applications have been telework ready for years, but they have often been full of technical glitches and missing features. So these are just a few examples of the concerns and complexities that we at the Office of Information Technology category within GSA's Federal Acquisition Service are working through with our agency customers and industry partners every day. While industry has been swifter at adopting mobility solutions than government, mobility plays an important role in IT modernization. As agencies look to improve operational and employee efficiency, reinforce security protocols, and enjoy overall cost savings, effective implementation through smart acquisition is critical. So you may be asking, how does one do that? We, the federal government, have found success by leveraging the principles of IT category management. Fundamentally, category management is about aligning federal buying behavior with the markets and industries from which we buy, and it is also intended to move the government-supplier relationship to be more collaborative in nature. This is achieved through increasing spend under management, reducing contract duplication, generating volume and administrative savings, enhancing data transparency, boosting innovation, and increasing efficiency and effectiveness. This framework gives liberty for enterprises to execute in a way that makes sense in the context of their conditions, as well as a way for vehicle owners to help supplement data capture and data sharing as a means for leadership to make appropriate, contextualized comparisons in order to make decisions. This helps agencies gain control over their inventory and costs, while granting personnel the ability to execute and according to their conditions. At this point in my presentation, I would like to take just a minute or so to tell you about a group that I'm a part of, the Federal Mobility Group, or FMG. The Federal Mobility Group works across federal government to identify common mobility challenges, develop workable solutions, and create an opportunity to share best practices. The FMG is co-chaired by mobile leaders from DHS, GSA, and NIST. This community of practice is chartered under the Federal CIO Council's Services, Strategies, and Infrastructure, SSSI, Committee, with matrix reporting relationship to the Federal IT Category Manager and Office of Federal Procurement Policy. The group was formally established in 2016 when we combined the Mobile Services Category Team with the Mobile Technology Type Team. We meet twice a month, and if you are government and are interested in joining, you can reach out to me directly or via email at wireless@gsa.gov. Okay, so moving on, OMB has engaged in designating certain government-wide vehicles as best in class. Each BIC vehicle receives its designation based in part on the type of data the vehicle captures, which empowers the category management strategy. A BIC designated contract represents a preferred government-wide solution and provides a unique opportunity to leverage the government's buying power. Very recently, our wireless mobility solution special item number 517312 received the best-in-class designation at GSA. Other BIC vehicles in this category include GSA EIS, NASA SUP, and Navy Spiral 3. Our MASSIN 517312 includes a broader set of wireless mobility solutions to better reflect the way government agencies buy mobility. This includes subcategories such as enterprise mobility management, which entails EMM tools, software, and service capabilities. Telecommunication expense management solutions, TIMS, which are solutions supporting lifecycle management of mobility and telecom-related assets. And Internet of Things, which features mobile sensor technology, mobile-to-mobile convergence, computing resources, digital sensors, and actuators. Other mobility contracting vehicles include GSA EIS, Navy Spiral 3, Army Chess, NASA SUP, and NITAC. Now, all of these federal acquisition vehicles that I just mentioned are designed to help agencies modernize for emerging technologies like 5G. We know that 5G will greatly enhance the speed, coverage, and responsiveness of wireless networks. How fast are we talking? One provider's network showed speeds surging past 1 gigabit per second. That's 10 to 100 times speedier than your typical cellular connection and even faster than anything you get from a physical fiber optic cable going into your house. In optimal conditions, you'll be able to download a season's worth of your favorite TV show in seconds. 5G is widely expected to be a defining stage in the global evolution of IT in general, affecting almost all parts of industry and society. It is intended to support converged communications and computing across public networks. This will encourage a wave of innovation in applications, services, and functions built to run on the new infrastructure. Because it enables IoT, 5G is one of the more important emerging technologies. Thanks to 5G's flexibility, every level of government will use 5G as IoT enters the public sector. Consider these applications: replacing outdated telecommunications and network technology in public buildings and facilities, allowing for advanced automation and security processes at logistics centers and our nation's ports, supporting augmented and virtual reality applications in our national laboratories, monitoring regional and interstate entities' power grids to keep pace with fluctuating demands, and providing traffic control and managing fleets, self-driving vehicles in cities. So next, let's talk about mobility during a crisis, specifically COVID-19. We asked several large telecommunication providers how COVID-19 is impacting their operations. One told us their device situation seems to be getting better as factories overseas are coming back online, which is great news. They're also seeing an increase in requests for wireless priority services across the board. Initial COVID-19 related requests were centered on MiFi hotspots, which continue to have inventory challenges across the industry. They have also seen customers pivoting to alternatives, including data-only smartphones with hotspot capabilities. The second carrier we spoke to stated that they proactively doubled the capacity of their hotspot feature to address the large increases in data usage. They have recently seen a large volume increase from some large agencies in the federal government. A third carrier we spoke to stated that their network continues to perform well during the coronavirus pandemic. They continuously monitor bandwidth usage, which reveals network trends and which provides them the ability to add capacity in areas where they see potential congestion. They also shared that their wireless voice minutes are up and Wi-Fi calling minutes are higher than average. Their core network traffic, which includes their business, home, broadband, and wireless usage, is up as well. Our final carrier we spoke to stated that their network continues to perform well. They removed data limits on smartphones and like their competitors, added additional data for tethering and hotspots. All of the major carriers provide specific public safety offerings to support emergency preparedness and public safety. This includes Wireless Priority Services, WPS, which provides national security emergency preparedness and public safety personnel priority access on all nationwide and most regional cellular networks, greatly increasing the probability of call completion. Government Emergency Telecommunication Services, GETS, where users receive higher probability of call completion during congestion and disruption. GETS works both with landline network and most cell phones on major carrier networks. There are other public safety specific solutions offered from other mobility carriers as well. Certain carriers offer customized solutions for public safety. Agencies should contact their providers directly or consult their websites for more information. In closing, I would like to once again thank ATARC for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm looking forward to the great sessions planned for this afternoon. And one thing I want everyone to remember, even though we may not know what the next federal emergency will be, we do know that mobile emerging technologies will play a crucial role in that. So our next mobile digital speakers and panels during this track today, will go into greater detail on these topics. So thank you for your time today once again. And now I'll turn it over to Jonathan Album, the Principal Data Strategist of Federal Government for Servicenow.
Hello, thanks for joining us today. My name is Tom Suter. I'm the founder of the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center, and I'm here to introduce a good friend of the program, Jonathan Album, who's the Principal Digital Strategist for Federal over at ServiceNow. How are you doing today, Jonathan?
I'm great, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Yep, great to have you. And one other thing I will note, he is actually on the ATARC board as well. So looking forward to your presentation. I think it's very timely these days. So looking forward to your presentation. Thank you.
All right, Tom. Well, I want to talk about perspectives on crisis management, from someone who's been a CIO. Those of you who don't know, prior to joining ServiceNow, I spent a number of years in the federal government in various CIO positions, mostly at USDA. I also worked at GSA for a period of time, but eventually I returned to USDA and I eventually became the CIO for the department. And through the course of my government career, I never encountered something exactly like coronavirus and the pandemic. I don't think any of us did, but but I did have a lot of time in government when we had various kinds of crisis. We did a lot of preparation around what do you do in a time of crisis. So thinking through the current situation, I put together some slides that illustrate where we were, where we're going, and what I think our ultimate destination is. So where we were was immediately in this response mode. As soon as we started to work from home, we had this perspective that we got to get our people functioning successfully. They have to be working. And, that was the right way to think about things, I think. It was for their employee safety, and it was, very much in line with what private sector was doing. So, we sent people home very quickly and responsibly. But this response mode, lasted probably longer than some of us thought. I think the challenges around full-scale remote work maybe weren't as well understood in early March as they are today. And we made a lot of investments in different technologies, hardware, software. We had a number of instances where we had to get more network capacity. Agencies were somewhat, in some cases, unprepared for full-scale telework, which is, understandable. It's not the way we typically work in government. In addition, during this response period, we had a number of new program requirements at different agencies. Small Business Administration got a payroll protection program, their economic impact disaster loan program, really had a lot of use. The IRS had new programs. The USDA established a coronavirus food program. So different agencies had new requirements coming in the various stimulus bills, and they had to be able to respond to those quickly as well. So we had a very acute focus across many agencies on getting things done and getting them done very quickly. And that was the right approach, in my opinion. As we move out of that, we have to be thinking about how do we take all of these changes, the innovations that come out of that, that moment, and incorporate them back into our agency in a way that creates some long-term stability. And that's this move to readiness that you see on the screen, right in the middle. And I think that's where we are today. And by that, I really think about agencies taking these lessons learned and applying them into their organization so we are all ready for whatever happens next. So what does that look like in some ways? It's, taking all this hardware and software and applying proper management controls, hardware asset management, software asset management. It's taking the innovations and changes that we had to make to our existing systems for new program requirements and incorporating them into our, our systems in a way where they can scale and can work over long periods of time. It's about building some agility into your organization where maybe it didn't exist before. Thinking about your workflows in places where you had a manual process that you couldn't change or maybe even execute because of the pandemic, and beginning to think about how do you transform digitally so that doesn't happen going forward. And that's this idea of building readiness into our organization. But that readiness is really a means to an end, and that end is this idea of being a very resilient organization. And you can think about it as almost the end point of a digital transformation is an organization that is entirely agile, able to shift on a dime. It is not impacted by what's happening in the outside world, and its resources and its data and its work can move and flow in ways that create real value, irrespective of the the world outside. And as program requirements change, as employees need to telework, as customers need to interact in different ways, as citizens have new requests of the agency can field those and do so very quickly. It is scalable, it is resilient, it is using its data in ways to really bring forth a digitally transformed digital government to the citizens that it serves. So that's what I think the roadmap is going to look like as we move forward. We responded very quickly. We're now building capabilities into our organizations with this goal of a long-term digital resiliency. So, as we move forward, I like to talk about this in what does it really mean and where do we focus? And, our focus immediately after we closed down our offices and moved to remote work was this idea of managing our human resources and thinking about our assets, whether they're hardware, they're software, or respirators, other medical equipment. And, that was kind of most critical. And, on the HR piece, I think we found that, in some places we didn't really understand all the data that we had on our employees, and we didn't necessarily know where everybody worked, where they were. We were very, I think appropriately concerned about making sure we could have good crisis communications to employees and to customers, and understanding if our employees were sick, understanding if, they had potentially been exposed to coronavirus, who they may have been in contact with. These were all things that were immediate challenges for a lot of the agencies that I spoke to. We didn't necessarily have capabilities in place that gave us the robust workflows that we needed at that time to make sure that employees could tell us their status, and if that status was one that indicated they had been exposed or were sick, how do we get in touch with people inside the agency, employees or contractors they may have been in contact with? That was a hard problem. And I know a lot of agencies really had to think through effective ways to do that. And then from an asset visibility perspective, we added a lot of capabilities because we didn't have them in our agencies in the beginning. I know from talking to some people who ran operations at different agencies, there was an immediate shock to the system when there was full-scale telework imposed. The number of agencies that had to go out and buy bandwidth or software licenses, was that number was quite large. And I don't think if you talk to those agencies beforehand, they would have expected that they were so unprepared from a resource perspective. Now, the good thing is we were able to acquire these capabilities very quickly. We had an acquisition community that was very focused on supporting the agencies as they added new capabilities, and they could do so very, very quickly. So acquiring all those capabilities, acquiring all those laptops and servers and software licenses, was really important. How those things get managed going forward will, really be important. Again, software asset management, hardware asset management, are really keys to making sure those resources are used effectively. There will come a point, maybe soon, where we don't have full-scale telework anymore. And as we hit that, we need to be thinking about being able to scale some of those licenses down. We have to be thinking about our organizations always changing, and having robust management tools allows you to be able to do that. As we continue forward and we think about, readiness, our focus is able to change a little bit from the immediacy, that response to some longer term thinking about, continuous monitoring, risk management, compliance, thinking about our data, thinking about how to use that data to inform our operation. And we're seeing this in different organizations today. It is, almost in some respects like a strategic pause to take the new capabilities that we've acquired and integrate them in. And when you think about the changes we had to make to programmatic systems, that we had to make them very quickly to meet new business requirements. The goal was meet this program need, meet the need of the small business that needs a loan, meet the need of the person who is out of work. Those changes, when they're made that fast, they may have unintended consequences. So thinking through, unanticipated things, thinking about risk that may have been added into your organization, is really important here. And, likewise, from a data perspective, all this information we now have about how we work remotely and how our programs operate needs to be internalized so we could plan for our organizations as we move forward. And as we move forward in this idea of resiliency, I really think about it as the front office, the middle office, and the back office working in concert, that work and the data just flow. And that's not where a lot of our organizations are presently. We have oftentimes very disconnected systems. We have silos. We have a lot of unstructured collaboration that we use to get work done. But I think what we all saw was that the citizen in a time of need, they don't really care what our internal processes look like, and they don't necessarily care that different programs are organized in different agencies in the government. They need help. They need it now. And as a government, we need to be thinking about a way to serve them, very quickly, and do it in a way that gets them benefits and gets them services as quickly as we can. Whether it's a customer, it's a citizen, or even an employee who needs some kind of service from their agency, getting it very quickly and simply is something everybody always appreciates. And that is, I think, a core of being this resilient organization, because when the work and the data flow, you're able to do a lot of things. You're not obstructed by artificial barriers that we've created or have allowed to persist in our organizations. So, what do we want as we move forward, and sort of what do we think about as we move from one area to the other? I talked about this a little bit. From a response perspective, we were able to acquire hardware and software very quickly, and we shifted very successfully from in-person to remote work for just about all of our employees. I've read a number of news stories recently where some IGs have even begun to examine their move to remote work, and you hear CIOs and agency leaders talk about this. And generally speaking, I think the results have been very positive. Work has continued. The agency missions are getting done. Maybe not as like they did in the past, maybe not as elegantly as maybe they would have if we had in-person capabilities, but the work is getting done. And I think that's a very important point for us to remember, and a huge positive for our agencies to fall back on as they look at how they perform during this period. So the other things are about communications and being able to communicate effectively to employees and to customers. And we built some of those capabilities in. When you think about communications with employees, one place where this comes up is the onboarding process and the offboarding process, which is all remote now. And being able to understand what that process looks like in an organization, being able to make sure that a new employee can join the organization effectively, that an employee who's leaving the organization can be properly processed out. Those things are really critical. And sometimes those operations are challenged in an in-person setting. When we're remote, it's even harder. But the fact that we're trying to do this remotely is, I think, shining a light to some degree on challenges with these processes. They're helping to illustrate them and flesh them out, and creating an opportunity for these processes to be digitized where they haven't been yet. So, it's from a readiness perspective, where we are today, and it's really about beginning that understanding of your work and your data, and thinking about how those things come together, how the work and data flow. I say that all the time because I think it's so critical. We know we have these business processes. We often don't understand the variety of systems or human interactions that are needed to get those processes done. This is a chance to really think through the way we served our customers remotely, and the way we had to quickly, make decisions on how we were going to use our systems to drive forward. We have to be thinking about all that software and hardware, optimizing our cost around it, and being in a position to take all those changes and ensure that we can run our agencies securely after these very rapid changes, and thinking about our vulnerabilities, remediating threats. And then lastly, from a resiliency perspective, and I think that these concepts are the core of digital transformation. We're automating workflows, and we're doing it very quickly. We are making sure that our business can be delivered under any circumstances. We're agile. We're taking the data that's across our environment, we're leveraging it via workflows. We're relying on legacy systems, but we're creating opportunities for really great customer and employee experiences by taking taking data, moving it around, and doing it in a way through workflow, but doing it in a way that creates a user experience that masks a lot of the complexity we have in our organizations. So I wanted to take a chance to build on that for just a second and talk about how we do that at ServiceNow, where we believe that behind every great experience is a great workflow. For ServiceNow, this all begins with the ServiceNow platform. That is the core to everything that we do. Sometimes people think about ServiceNow as an IT service management company, or maybe they heard that we do HR. But really, and I think the best way to think about ServiceNow is as a platform company. And that platform, the Now platform, is one thing. It's one data model. It's one architecture. It is the foundation for all of our workflows. It has a lot of core capabilities from machine learning and artificial intelligence to integration capability, tools for developers, a configuration management database. It's got the core of all that we do, and the workflows that people really know and associate with ServiceNow: IT service management, or IT operations, or onboarding, customer interaction. Those workflows are built on top of the Now platform. So when you buy ServiceNow, you're buying the ServiceNow platform and workflows that maybe we created, or using our App Engine, you're buying the ability to create your own workflows. But the fact that we're this platform company with this, these great award-winning workflows and ability to build your own, that it's one database, it's one product, it's only one thing that you're acquiring. I think that is a real unique differentiator for ServiceNow in the marketplace. And the fact that we have this strong integration that I mentioned with various systems of record, the legacy systems, sometimes we call them, the systems that hold the core data of the agency, allows for integration in ways that we've always wanted to have, but oftentimes we haven't been able to simply create. Now, having been a government CIO for many years, I know that there are legacy systems that we are going to have to manage in our environments for the foreseeable future. It's not easy to swap them out. But what we should be doing is really understanding the data and figuring out how to leverage that data via workflow to drive great mission outcomes. And that is one of the things that ServiceNow is very good at doing. You really create this sort of modular approach where ServiceNow can serve as this overarching integration platform for the legacy systems. And as systems are improved or swapped out, the way people interact with the data and the way they interact with their various workflows to drive agency processes, that doesn't have to change. And the fact that we're this platform integration opportunity, makes us feel like we're the platform of the platforms relative to the rest of the market. None of those tools on the bottom need to go away or need to lose in order for ServiceNow to win. We think about this kind of platform of platforms concept in a lot of the work that we do. We can work across any number of capabilities that you have in your agency to create integrated experiences. And you build upon that with the interconnections with the various conversational tools we use, whether it's email, Slack, mobile devices, or whatnot. You can really break down the unstructured collaboration, the systems, and the silos that have challenged agencies to work as one, and challenged the government to work as one government, and state governments and federal government interaction, is often challenged because of the variety of systems and complexity between them. And we can really break that down in a way that creates for digital transformation. It creates a 21st century government. It creates experiences that people remember, that help them achieve whatever their goal is, whether it's to get a product, to get a service, to interact with HR, to interact with customer service. It's really, in my opinion, a fast path towards digital transformation. And when you think about things this way, and you can think about masking the complexity in our organizations, and what the user sees, what the citizen sees, what the employee sees is a great experience, now they can be more focused on their job and driving mission. They can be more engaged with their work. So those things are, really, I think, key about the Now platform and how we drive and support this roadmap to resiliency, from the immediate response we all went through to planning for readiness, thinking about security, and thinking about operationalizing these great ideas and innovations to build this really digitally resilient organization that's there for government as we move forward and continue to support citizens, employees, customers post COVID-19. Oh, with that, I want to say thank you, Tom. I appreciated the opportunity to talk this through with you, and look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you, Jonathan. That was a right on time type of discussion, considering where we are with pandemic. And that was Jonathan Album, Principal Digital Strategist, Federal for Servicenow. And thank you for your attention, and back to the rest of the program.
Yeah, there we are. Am I on? Because I'm using a different microphone. Yay, someone can hear me. All right. It's a different type of setup I'm using than my normal Zoom, but it seems to be working. Tom did not do the introductions that I expected, but I will take over the introductions. I'm Jason Miller, Federal News Network's executive editor, and I'm going to moderate this upcoming panel. So thanks to Tom Suter and all the folks at ATARC for inviting me. It's been doing this now for a few months, this virtual panel thing. I think we're all getting used to it. New approach to events. I still miss the live events, but I have to say these are growing on me. Now, if you've seen me do panels before, I like to start with a little trivia. It's kind of hard to do trivia online, unless if I ask the people who know all the answers to all these questions. So I went with something a little different today. I'm just going to throw out some facts. These are facts that I came up with last night. I did not invent them. I actually did research and found them, just to set a little context for our discussion. So here we go. This is just kind of some food for thought. January, so this past January, was 8 years since OMB released the Federal Mobile Strategy. And just to give you a sense of how far we've come, in 2012, when this Federal Mobile Strategy was initially released, Apple launched the iPhone 5. The high end of Apple iPhone 5 offered a whole 64 gigabytes of memory. That's one thing to keep in mind. Second thing, federal websites, this is the most recent data as of last night, received more than 6.6 billion visits over the last 30 days. 56% of those visits to those federal websites came from mobile devices. And that's according to analytics.usa.gov. At Federal News Network, we've seen the same thing. More and more people are coming from mobile devices. Finally, agencies spend roughly, and this is from our friends at Dell Tech, $1.4 billion a year on mobile devices and services. I think this is up from about $1 billion a year from back when the strategic sourcing / category management really got going, 2015, 2016 timeframe. So this is just a little bit of food for thought for our discussion today, get you warmed up. And I'm going to start by introducing the panel. I don't do bios, I don't do backgrounds. So I'm going to turn it over to Vincent Serpan from the Homeland Security Department, Science and Technology. He's the Mobile Security R&D Program Manager. Vincent, tell us about the Federal Mobility Group.
Hi. Okay. So hi, everyone. Vincent Serpan from DHS S&T. So what is the Federal Mobility Group? And I actually have a slide here or two that you guys can see. So just here you are. So just a background in who we are. We were chartered, signed as of July of last year, 2019. We're really here to look at common mobility challenges, workable solutions, and shared best practices. And what this means, and you say, well, what's the big deal? It's really anybody and everybody who owns and operates a mobile platform in federal government is usually a part of this group in some form or fashion. As we're chartered under the FedCIO Council, under the SSI committee, we also have a dotted line, relationship with the Federal IT Category Manager at GSA, and also with the Office of Federal Procurement and Policy. Our background, if you think about, you talked about some of the history. some of us actually come together since 2011, 2012, since the digital government strategy days, with a group called the Mobile Technology Tiger Team. In 2015, 2016, when you had OMB 16-20 and you had the mobile services category team, we literally found that these groups, right, same people, were going to the same meetings, working on various challenges, whether it's acquisition, IT category management for mobile, or mobile security, R&D efforts, you name it. So we actually merged those two groups under the permission and approval through the FedCIO Council, and we focus on mission problems when it comes to mobility, right? How can mobility enable our workplace? But more commonly, we actually have various challenges today. It is being led by our executive sponsor. She just retired, Miss Renee Wynn, from the NASA CIO. It's co-chaired by DHS, GSA, and NIST. You're going to see Sam Navarro from GSA speaking later, speaking right in this panel, and then Gemma Howell, actually from NIST, actually covering, from the standard side of the house. Membership, as you can see here, is quite broad, right? You talk about 45 departments and agencies, over 200 plus members. We meet on the first and third Tuesday of every month, and that's just our main meetings, right? Our working groups, as you'll see in the next slide here, really focuses in 4 pillars. And so, who we are as an organization really focuses on 4 pillars, right? Mobile security activities, a lot of these things that are done behind the scenes, mobile acquisition, 5G mobile network infrastructure, and mission enablement. So, it is a cross federal government led activity, very much a community practice that is volunteer, right? And so in mobile security, you can think of things like Fisma mobile metrics, right? In FY20, and how we've added 4 additional metrics with an additional one coming in FY21. You can see mobile metrics, whether you're looking at enterprise mobility management, regardless of what you're looking at, we're looking to help make folks accountable for not only what they have, right, but also how they protect them. Derived PIV credential efforts we have there, led by Cheryl Jenkins from GSA. And so, whether it's Fisma, led by Dave Harris from Department of Interior, Cheryl Jenkins for the DPIV efforts, those are just mobile security and some of the activities we do. Other parts you'll hear from Betsy in this panel. She is our pillar lead from NASA SOUP. And we do a variety of activities, whether defining activities or things like categories for mobile efforts, mobile things you can buy. Also things like the IDC integrated data collection metrics, which you heard from Christian earlier, right? Modernizing and updating that and what people are required to report on. In 5G mobile network infrastructure, we have Joshua Weaver from DoD leading that effort. And think about various 5G efforts where it's, honestly, it's been a lot of internal FOUO activities where we have been collecting, looking at 5G testbed activities. But all of that is there really to help us understand what test assets are out there, how we can best leverage it, and really who's who in the zoo of 5G doing what, right? A lot of activities happening in research and development side. So a lot of that effort is there, really helping to coordinate a lot of efforts within the 5G space. And mission enablement, led by Lon Gowan from USAID, this is actually how we engage with industry. You'll see efforts where we are, learning about the latest emerging technology, learning about, how, things are done in the sense of, is there a new EMM solution or MTD solution that just received FedRAMP and how that works out, to, things like virtual mobile infrastructure, you name it, 5G test lab visits, we have the whole 9 yards. But the whole piece of this is that these 4 strategic pillars really are all there to enable the mission, especially as we use mobility, not from just common challenge. There's no one, organization that's so unique that we don't have commonality. There's a lot of things where we can actually share and work together. And that's really what the Federal Mobility Group's all about. Back to you, Jason.
Lost your audio for about 10 seconds there, so we may have missed a little bit toward the end, but I think we're good. I do want to just ask one quick follow-up, Vincent. I want to bring up the other folks in the discussion, but you mentioned security metrics for 2020 and additional one for 2021. Can you give us any kind of hint or update of what those metrics are?
Yeah, so this is just a recommendation from Federal Mobility Group, right? Everything we push forward as a community is a recommendation. They do go through their approval, process. So things like, for example, in FY20, that's all public. Those were non-scored metrics before additional things like, are you implementing things like should drive credentials, or do you do whitelisting, blacklisting of your mobile applications, things like that, right? Those were added in FY20. You can find those online. I would say the big push for FY21 is going to be on mobile threat defense. You may have seen this in various efforts across federal government, even in our NIST 800-124 special publication with the revision. You'll see the definition is there. People are being pushed to not only account hardware, software, asset management of the device, right? But really, it comes down to what are you doing to protect that device, right? Do you have endpoint management on that phone, or some kind of antivirus or something like that, right? Today, EMMs themselves aren't enough, and so things like mobile threat defense help in that manner. Okay.
All right. Very helpful. Very helpful. All right. Let's continue the conversation, and let's turn and talk a little bit about acquisition. Betsy from GSA, talk a little bit about acquisition metrics.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Is that Sam from GSA or Betsy from NASA? I'm not sure which.
Betsy.
I was trying to do two things at once. Betsy.
That is okay. This is government collaboration at its best. We don't know. I'm one of the 4-letter agencies, not the 3-letter, but it's okay. No, thanks very much. And thanks for the introduction. So I'm Betsy Sirk. I currently reside within the NASA SOUP program office. So that is one of the acquisition solutions that we address. But in my leadership role of this acquisition pillar, we were tasked with looking across the government and defining what is in this federal mobility landscape. What do we consider is included? So you've heard other speakers reference that. Back in 2016, when the strategy was first put in place about mobile acquisitions, I was part of the mobile category team at that time. They did a great job of bringing multi-agencies together, multi-perspectives together, and laying out the federal landscape. Well, as you can imagine, in 4 years, or 3 years, because we actually produced this document at the end of 2019, much has changed. So we were tasked by both our executive sponsor from the NASA CIO, she was the Federal CIO Council rep, as well as those representing category management solutions, to put this all together. So we did something that's kind of innovative in that for the first time, we laid out an update of these categories, and there are 14 of them. And what I'm going to do is read over a couple so you know what I'm talking about when I say categories, but things like wireless carrier services, mobile hardware infrastructure, mobile devices, devices as service. And we added things such as the IoT and also consulting services. But there are 14 categories with the intent being we define them. And again, coming to consensus with multi-agencies, we had over a dozen agencies participate and close to 30 representatives. And we came to consensus that these definitions serve a purpose for, at this point in time, conveying what is in that category of mobile solutions. What we did, though, in addition to define these categories, is we had, and it was alluded to earlier, there are best-in-class and also government-wide existing solutions for acquisition so that an agency does not have to start in developing its strategic acquisition plan from scratch. You can look at what is there and you can engage directly with the people that are involved in these to help you align with whatever your needs are to be met. So this is a group that, in addition to stakeholders and agency customers, we have Navy Spiral 3, the Army Chess program, the NASA SOUP program, NIH's NITAC program, and then GSA. They have a couple of solutions in here as well. So this guide that we developed that's entitled Mobile Categories and Acquisition Options, and we submitted to the Federal CIO Council along with the Federal Mobility Group at the total level, submitted several documents for concurrence and approval. And we gained support for this document early this spring. And it takes these categories and actually in a matrix aligns them with X's at a high level to show you which of these acquisition solutions from Navy or Army or NASA or NIH or GSA, which could be used to provide any or all of the services within this category. So this is very, in our opinion, it's kind of innovative because it shows not only the collaboration, but it aligns with the category management and the push to use existing government vehicles. So this is meant to help agencies navigate through this. It also helps in that, and we'll probably get later into the pandemic, but I did want to mention a couple of things about how this situation has driven us to really think about what mission enabling is. That is our purpose all the time. But now we have to be flexible, we have to be responsive, we have to be efficient, and we have to be timely. So the new cutting edge and emerging technology that's required by frontline responders, how do they get that? How do they get that in their hands quickly to deploy? So using this strategy and framework, if your agency has not already had alignment with one of the contract vehicles to do this, this is the perfect time to engage and see how responsive you can be. And I just want to say, like case in point, with NASA SOUP, the SOUP program, we had the unfortunate circumstance earlier this year to have a fire in our building that took out our capability of anybody being on site. And so those who normally did not telework were all forced to ensure that they had all the capabilities to work remotely. That actually prepared us very well for the pandemic, because when we were ordered not to report on site, we haven't missed a beat. But the outward facing change we made is we have ensured that these new and emerging technologies that are needed by our first responders can be added to the contracts within one business day and in many cases hours, so that our customers can buy them. So that is something that is flexible, it's pushed. I know other contract vehicles have that capability, but I can speak directly to NASA SOUP being able to do that. So that is kind of in summary where we are, what this team has been. I can't emphasize enough the collaboration because we all look at it as if a customer is able to get the technology they need, especially during these difficult times, swiftly, efficiently, and meeting their mission, it doesn't matter which acquisition vehicle they use. We are a success as a team because we've pointed them to a workable solution. So thank you very much, and I guess on to the next person.
All right, but I got a follow-up question. That's my job, right? So first, I want to remind our audience, please submit questions to the panel. Don't forget that we will hopefully have time for questions. That's on my plan at least. But my one question for you, just to put maybe a finer point on this, is the work you guys have done under the acquisition pillar to create this white paper, this document. This is not finished yet. This is something that is still to OMB, to the CIO Council for, if you will, approval, for lack of a better word. And it's something we should look for soon, or is it available today?
Oh, thank you for asking the clarifying question. It is available today. It was approved, I believe, I don't know the official approval time, but I believe it was March. So this is available, and we can, it is available for those who have access to the Federal Mobility Group materials and websites, and I will defer to Vincent to say what all those URLs are, but you can also find this document on most of our contract solutions websites itself. I will ensure that you can easily find it on NASA SOUP, but I know NIH has posted it, and I believe Army and Navy have as well. So it is a 20-ish page document, and let me just say it gives some context, so it's not just the chart. It talks about the background and the categories, but it also provides guidance at the end, about 2 pages per solution vehicle, contract solution vehicle. It allowed them to describe how they address what they address. Because you will see that most of these solutions do provide some or all of the capabilities in all the categories, but there are some gaps by design. So if you know you want something specific, you can use this to see, oh, who offers this? And maybe out of the 7 solutions, there are 3, and it can help streamline your effort to see if you could get what you want. So this is available. And again, I'm being a bad spokesperson and not having the URLs or email addresses memorized. But I believe Vincent is one, or Sam is one of the overall Federal Mobility Group leaders can give you that. Thank you. I hope that helps.
Yeah, so if you email wireless@gsa.gov, you can actually just request it. That's easy enough. A lot of the documents that we've been working on this last year have been very much internal to the government. There are a few things that have to go through the processing, like Fisma, you'll get it. IDC metrics and those guidance will come out, and you'll get those too. But there are efforts that we have that, especially in the next fiscal year, where we'll be doing that are much more public facing, such as the areas of 5G, with folks like you can talk about. Yeah, the team can talk about it. Okay, great.
All right. Well, you piqued my interest, Vincent. So I'm going to ask for it. So go ahead, and put me down on your list for a request.
Sure.
Let's turn to Josh Weaver from the Navy. Josh, talk a little bit about your role and the area you focus on.
Yeah, so I've been a telecom engineer for the world's finest Navy for about 11 years now. For the past 5 or so, supporting the Office of Secretary of Defense Research and Engineering Group. My background is mostly in spectrum issues and in wireless technologies. Vincent asked if I could chair the 5G group beginning last year, so to which I agreed. And in that time, we've put together a couple white papers, and as Vincent mentioned, a lot of it's FOUL at this point. One of them was kind of dissecting some of the major federal policies and executive orders that impacted the expeditious rollout of 5G infrastructure and services within the federal government space. So we kind of dissected those a little bit and documented them and came up with some recommendations and submitted that up to the Federal CIO Council. And that is available, I believe, but to government members only. It's FOUL. The second white paper we did was a tour of some of our national 5G test assets to include public, private, and academic. A bunch of members from the Federal Mobility Group would go on the road and visit a lot of these labs in person and support remotely via telephone if they couldn't be in person. But we visited about 15 or so labs throughout that period of time and documented their capabilities, their roadmaps, what kind of grade of equipment they're going to buy, whether it's carrier grade or if they're going more in the open source sciencey side, and kind of put together a table and a documented package of what's available. And that was somewhat cut short when COVID cut off. A lot of us had the kibosh put on travel, so some of the final ones we did via telephone. But we were able to hit, like I said, about 15 before the virus shut it down. That has also is FOUL and has been submitted up to CIO Council, but it's kind of a follow-on effort to that. And a paper that's currently in process is documenting some of the 5G use cases from across the federal workforce and trying to develop a testbed framework. So if you're going to deploy your use case and you want to test it and verify it, what kinds of features and functions in a test capability do you need to look for? We want to stay away from recommending specific labs or specific companies or agencies to do the testing, but at least if we have documented what those capabilities are and what capabilities you need to look for in a use case, you can kind of, as a government agent, make your most informed decisions. So that's kind of the goal with that. And the intent for that document, at least for now, is to have a version of it that is publicly made available. So stand by for that as we continue to refine it. I think back to you for questions.
All right. I have actually one quick one because I think these are all really interesting pieces and parts. When you looked, and you'll forgive me if there's only so much you can talk about it, but when you looked at the tour of the 5G assets, when you looked at public sector, private sector, when you looked at all the different labs, are you able to offer maybe one or two things that maybe surprised you, or a trend, or something that stood out to you that kind of would give our audience a little bit of insight into that paper without, fully opening the kimono, so to speak?
Sure. Yeah, I won't go into incredible detail, but I'll say that it probably isn't surprising that some of the major carriers, of course, are going to have carrier grade equipment, the very expensive, Nokia, Ericsson type gear that your universities may not be able to afford. So then you go on the more academic side, you're looking at the open source network and RAN type technologies, which not only are they less costly, but they also typically, because they're not proprietary, they offer a lot more hooks and bells and whistles that researchers can get in and test and tune and tweak and really try to refine the technology and discover new capabilities. So it really is interesting to see the kind of balance between the two, depending on how much budget you have to afford for the equipment as to what you can research.
Yes.
It's
interesting. It was. Vincent, did you want to jump in?
Oh, no.
This is Sam.
Okay. Sam. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, just a caveat
Sam,
on that point on what we learned. On what we learned going across the country to these different places. I think first and foremost, it allowed us to really get a better understanding on use cases and their availability. From fixed wireless may be available sooner than other capabilities that may require more of a proliferation of the technology from a broader perspective. I think secondly, we were able to see innovative ways that different stakeholders are addressing challenges with next generation wireless. One of the things we were able to kind of see and really be amazed at is dynamic spectrum capabilities. One that was put on display in the Mobile World Congress by DARPA, a Coliseum that folks can kind of just Google and look at into their cells. But being that definitely spectrum is one of those thresholds that we're looking at moving forward, and not just us, other entities that play a major role, DoD, the FCC. It's just very interesting to see the innovative ways that the community as a whole, whether federal, academia, or industry in general, are tackling it together.
Yeah, I'll also add that touring some of the federal lab spaces also raised awareness of what capabilities exist already, which was new to some of us. And there was surprising sectors of the federal government that were doing research in 5G that I would not have anticipated prior to our visit. So that was also pretty interesting to discover.
All right, excellent. That was both very helpful. Sam, thanks for jumping in, because now it's your turn to tell us what capabilities are available today and maybe what's going to be available tomorrow from GSA.
Thank you. Betsy touched very well and alluded to what we've done. And I think definitely it's allowed us to learn as a community on what use cases are more relevant to us, in particular now where the pandemic is kind of continuously been a challenge versus things that we can depend on farther out. And what we've learned definitely is bringing in the carriers and different players from industry is that there's capabilities out there that can quickly get your workforce to a mobile capability at a rapid rate. And so we encourage folks to definitely pick up the documentation that we've been working on, as Betsy alluded to kind of better educate themselves on how to procure those and how to get those within their portfolios rapidly. But within that, we've also worked within different niches across the federal government, such as the first responder community. I know from a GSA perspective, we helped the CDC buy over 22,000 mobile devices, and within those, over 7,000 of those were first responder grade mobile devices to help deploy rapidly support their bio teams in the event of outbreaks and different things going on across the country. Lastly, now that we're kind of in a stance of how do we get back to work, but from a safe mechanism perspective, we're looking at different use cases that mobility could be deployed smartly. One of the things that agencies I know are looking at is how do we make buildings safer and detect folks who may be disposed to the virus and ensure that we deal with that in a proper manner, such as thermal analytics and how that could be deployed in a smart and safe way within a building to identify folks that may have a high temperature and may be triaged to another level. So in focus, there's definitely many different ways to bring in mobility and wrap it into either a teleworking capability, which agencies are looking at to keep folks safe and productive within their homes, or if you're bringing your folks to back to the office. Mobility is just a cross collaborative technology that really enables relatively any use case you can think of to ensure that agencies stay productive and still deliver for the taxpayer.
Okay, that was helpful. I'm just going to see. We have not gotten any questions yet that I'm seeing. Let me just check here. No questions yet, but please send in your questions if you guys have them. We can definitely answer them as they come in. One thing that Sam that comes back to is this idea of how GSA is potentially using mobile devices to help agencies as employees to return back to their buildings, their facilities. GSA set up a very interesting BPA around facility management. Did you guys play a role in that, where enhanced services, I think was the title? Did you guys help them with the understanding of what are the possibilities of mobile, or did where does mobility fit into that broader discussion?
Great question. We've had cross collaborative talks with the PBS team, and we're constantly in conversations on what works best for within building utilization of the technology versus out of building utilization of technology. I can say that definitely in certain areas, the capabilities to leverage wireless have increased. And of course, that depends on the rates, the data rates, and the kinds of spectrum that are available within the areas that you're working in. And so we're definitely trying to ensure that the right stakeholder gets to the right sourcing solution depending on what that deployment is. From a strictly fixed wireless perspective, the Federal Acquisition Service has avenues to get to that, whether it's EIS or the mobile schedule. So it just depends on what's the best sourcing approach for the customer. If you're definitely trying to deploy something within a GSA building and you're a tenant in a GSA building, PBS does have different acquisition strategies for that. One to add up to that is the furniture and IT program as well, where GSA can procure on the tenant's behalf a lot of the capabilities they're looking for, and it could potentially be more rapid deployment versus a traditional solicitation.
All right, we did get a question in, and that question is a pretty easy one, so we're going to throw it to everyone. Maybe start with Vincent and work our way back. Vincent, what is the focus of the Federal Mobility Working Group over the next year? I guess what are some of your priorities?
Yeah, so I think we'll continue along based on guidance from FedCIO Council, the IT Category Manager, and OFPP. You'll see things as continual updates to the things like the Fisma or IBC for mobile. You also see additional guidance out. So, for example, NIST 800-124 revision that's out for comment. Our group will continue to work on those. Other efforts, as you see, Betsy's and her work, her strategic pillar on the acquisition efforts. We are looking at doing things like a webinar or some kind of video training tutorial to help educate folks in that area. I think for the 5G efforts, you'll see where we are pushing more for a 5G testbed framework, things that can be more publicly available and leverage, because it's not, yes, it's very important to support federal government as a whole. In order to, in this case, like say, restore U.S. leadership in 5G and telecommunications, it is a public-private partnership that needs to occur, right? So you'll see much more, I think, focus going forward, not only in the 5G space for sure, but federal government and how do we enable and leverage, industry to help meet our mission. So I think those will be the key things.
Okay. Anyone else want to jump in and talk about priorities from your specific area?
Hi, this is
I'll say on the
Betsy.
5G side,
Go ahead, Steve.
Go for it, Josh.
go ahead, Betsy. Okay.
All right, I'll make the
Just say
decision.
on
Josh,
the
go.
5G
Josh,
side,
go.
Go for it, Josh.
on the 5G side, I don't want to. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't want to get in front of the CIO council and announce anything specific, but we have been tossing around some ideas on how to kind of get more information made public to have intelligent decisions being made by both leadership and people who apply their power with their vote. We just want people to be informed on the technologies and things that may impede us from being global leaders in the technology space. So we've got some of those ideas coming down, but as Vincent said, further expounding on the work that's currently in progress and that we've completed this year, and making that public, and potentially making that public in a easy to use way. We've got some ideas around that as well. It's not just a document, perhaps. So those are kind of some of the things that we're looking at. Over.
Yeah, and if I can add, this is Vincent. As far as for 5G efforts, I mean, I hope at least with the Federal Mobility Group, we're able to figure out who's who in the zoo in 5G. Lots of 5G activity efforts, especially on the research and development side, all of that is in support of things like the National Strategy to Secure 5G or Secure 5G and Beyond Act, led by the National Security Council and National Economic Council. We are plugged in those efforts as those are worked, but figuring out how we can actually coordinate cross federal government is really a key effort, whether it's now and in the future. You're going to see efforts across the board where people are standing up capabilities, and it's important to figure out, are we using taxpayer dollars effectively and efficiently, right? So can we share those resources, share our requirements so that can be leveraged? So some things may take form in a white paper, others may just take form in engagement, right? Actual working together collaboratively would be really great to see.
All I was going to
Betsy,
add
jump
very
in.
quickly. Thanks. All I was going to add very quickly for the acquisition pillar, one of our focus areas moving forward is sharing best practices among the other pillars of the FMG out to our customers, such as in 5G adoption. We're having each contract vehicle present what innovations they're doing in that area, and also things such as working with individual companies to get things in place that support our mobile infrastructure, such as how you negotiate Apple Care agreements, et cetera. Sharing that type of information, regardless of the origination of the FMG, across all the pillars is one of our focus areas. And the other is, I think Vincent was mentioning, in developing webinars, this would be a way that we get out to the acquisition community in addition to the chief information officer community. So we had already had an opportunity to present to the CIO council what is a way that we can roll out the information. So in concert with OFPP and OMB, we are going to use the webinars or these education series opportunities that we develop to educate all of us. So we're trying to hit it multi-pronged, but that's all I had wanted to add. Thank you.
Actually, I have one quick one for you as well, because we had a question come in about industry. What's the industry? What should they know about? What role do they play? How can they take part in or contribute to the mobility group? Maybe you've even broadened that out from an industry perspective as where do they fit into this discussion beyond the obvious ones of being the service providers, providing the devices, but what do you need from them?
Yes. So,
From go ahead, Vincent. Go ahead.
oh no, you can please. Okay,
It's fine.
I'll just answer real quick. Yeah, so for Fisma as an example, when we look at adding things in a category, a requirement, right, a metric that's out there, we actually bounce this off. So as an easy example of a partnership with industry, when Dave Harris worked with the cross-federal government to say, hey, these are the Fisma metrics in mobile that we're going to add, we actually work with the ATARC, folks in industry that are actually a part of that to see are we asking things that make sense? Are we putting things in a metric that actually exists, right? Or is it just an aspirational goal that we're looking for, right? We do know this from owning and operating mobile capability, but having that partnership and working with industry to determine, hey, this is reality, right? Even with the metrics efforts that we're doing a Fisma mobile playbook that'll hopefully come out later this fiscal year, where we actually partnered with the top EMM vendors, not to name names, that actually went through all the metrics and showed, step by step, how would they answer it if they had their system deployed in an agency. So just an easy example of how we've worked with industry. Let's see.
The definition of the mobile categories themselves and the update of the categories were also vetted with industry representatives to ensure that there was the alignment there and the understanding. So the very terminology that we use to describe this space can be a point of confusion. So we really did, in the development of our acquisition pillar activities, get their input up front. So there is a continuing dialogue that way. This is a slightly different challenge. The other activity that I lead across the government under category management is the Workstation category team. And there we have a very discrete relationship with the key OEMs that provide the desktop, laptop, tablet, thin client solutions, and we vet with them, or in that case, it's developing specifications. So that's different than the Federal Mobility Group approach, but it's still one in which we want to get the feedback from industry to ensure that what we're saying is not only technically accurate, but it's in line with what the strategic directions are of industry. So that doesn't change where the government needs are, but it helps us align it. Here, it's more because I consider it a mission enabling support pillar. That's what the acquisition is about. When we're talking to providers of 5G and they're looking at our categories and they're ensuring that we have captured accurately what products and services they provide, that kind of helps that collaboration from the baseline standpoint.
All right, very nice. Vincent, from you got me my curiosity piqued once again. The Fisma mobile playbook. Is there anything more you can tell us about that?
Yeah, so I mean that is an effort led by Dave Harris from Department of Interior. That effort should be a good portion of it should be public, just because of the fact that it's clarity on what are the metrics, what do they mean. Partnership with folks like NIST and those who actually control the guidance on things like PIV drive credentials. And what we try to go about that playbook really is around, helping agencies answer the metrics and actually going step by step. I mean, if we could script this out, that would be great. But in our efforts with the industry, right, it was that we want to work with them, they want to work with us. But if we change, for example, the metric all the time, or we want their engagement to update this guidance every month or every 3 months, it's maybe not tenable. But something like Fisma mobile metrics, where it's once a year, we can actually engage once a year. We were able to work with, I would say, all the top EMM vendors to get screenshots and guidance on everything from hardware, software, asset management to PIV drive credentials, whitelist, blacklisting of mobile applications. These
Vincent, we lost you again.
Audio.
Oh.
Yeah, we lost you, Vincent, for a minute. Just at the end there. As soon as you said whitelisting, blacklisting, screenshots, mobile apps, but then you seem to fade out.
Yeah, so that'll just help agencies. It'll help agencies be able to answer the mobile metrics so that the quality of the data is actually there. That's all.
That's really helpful. I think we're just about out of time. I think we're supposed to be off at Christian's giving us the 2-minute warning, so we can probably have time for one more question. Let's see if anybody has thrown a question at us. The one question that probably is out there is agencies and given the pandemic or future emergencies, how are agencies better prepared maybe today than they were 3 months ago, than they were 6 months ago? Maybe something, Josh, you want to start us off, or is that something maybe for Vincent? Josh?
Sure. Yeah, I think there's a lot of lessons learned. Hello? Yeah. I think we have a lot of lessons that we can learn from this pandemic, right? There's when all of a sudden everyone was quarantined and had to figure out how to work remotely, right? There was massive shifts in policy and supporting information technology infrastructure to bolster those telework capabilities. Agencies had to deploy additional resources to enable the remote collaboration. There was relaxed BYOD policies and being able to use your personal networks to dial in and do official work. So a lot of that were things that some agencies were already good at, and some had to rapidly come up to speed quickly. So I think in the future there'll be a lot we can leverage from those learnings. One of the challenges I think in the future, or something that we could be better at, is reaching this steady state a lot quicker. And I think that's going to be possible because of the things that we've learned, as long as we take what we've learned and use it in the future. So we can reach this state where everybody is able to work from home, and the networks are performing as desired, and people's IT is in place, and they know where they're supposed to be and when from a remote telework kind of standpoint. Let's see. I had some notes on this. And specific to 5G, I think there's some new technologies on the horizon, whether it's private networks or slicing, that are going to enable agencies to either dedicate or contract for dedicated services to support their mission without having to worry about the massive shifts in network traffic affecting their users to get their work done. I think that's very, very promising technologies that can help out in future emergency events, should they occur, heaven forbid, of course.
Vincent, you want to jump in real quick?
Yeah, so I think overall, for how can agencies better prepare, or even what should they do going forward in case of a future emergency going forward. So I will say, things like checking your service level agreements. I know there's been a lot of change in onboarding from hundreds of people concurrent online to tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands now. So that is a big shift. So when we talk to the various carriers, looking at their networks and other things, they could actually handle it. But guess what? Maybe your service level agreement wasn't up to allow for that many concurrent lines or users online. Other things, though, besides making it available, is making it secure. So I would look into, how are you securing this? How are you ensuring that the data, you are protecting it, and the privacy of your individuals. But one thing to note actually is, I would say, is things like telework, secure telework guidance, right? NIST, NSA, CISA have all put that out. Those are there today. You should go take a look out there. Just Google it, or look it up on the news. You'll find a lot of guidance out there. Things like wireless priority services. There is an uptick, and because of this, people are looking at, well, I'm eligible. That's a free service, provided by CISA. Shouldn't I be going and enabling and using that? That's something you should get now. You don't have to wait for the next pandemic. And things like FirstNet, if you do have folks in the public safety domain, you want to have priority preemption. You want to have those capabilities. So, good way to prepare.
One of the biggest success stories we've seen from this pandemic emergency has been the use of, if you will, the credentials, because you can't go get a PIV card, you can't go get a CAC, you have to get it somehow electronically. And I know that DHS had a pilot that they really accelerated to get during the pandemic to go from a few people to lots of people. I'm just wondering if there's any other examples of innovations like that really that you guys have seen or you guys have heard about. I think some of the discussions earlier today about the virtual onboarding is another part of that success story as well. Anything come to mind from anyone?
Betsy?
Yeah, the only thing that I want to just reiterate, I mentioned it briefly in the opening statement, is that just in the case of NASA SOUP, looking at onboarding within hours, new technology. So the way SOUP works is you've got 140 contract holders and 80% or over 115 of those are small businesses. And then they deal with 7,500 companies, manufacturers, not resellers. So if there is an identified need for a new and emerging technology that one didn't think of before that can enable, and like in this case, the CDC really used this particular acquisition vehicle to get a lot of deployments of technologies that they didn't have before. So to get that available in hours so that one can go ahead and buy it, identifying those flexible and quick acquisition solutions is really key to getting the technology in their hands. So I'm not saying that SOUP is the only flexible one like that. There are many other mechanisms, and they're all reflected in the acquisition document that we've been referring to. But I think that really is key, because usually one struggles with, okay, we have this capability, how do we get it? And so that was a process transformation here. And the other thing is, just really quick, I wanted to throw this in. There is a huge challenge for IT accessibility. So some may know it as compliance with Section 508, but basically ensuring that the IT that one gets is accessible to all people, regardless of disability, is not only the federal law, but in a pandemic, it's especially crucial, because you're finding a huge gap in communications not being accessible. And mobile technologies actually have driven accessibility they're very good in getting out what their accessibility features are. So I think enabling the quick and swift acquisition of mobile technology is not only helping people do their needed roles in the pandemic, especially the first responders, but it's in helping to improve accessibility as well. And I've been on global panels. Access Israel is a group, for example, that's out of Israel. That's a worldwide effort to look at, in the pandemic, how to promote accessible IT. So I just think the Federal Mobility Group, that's another touch point and a way that we can help the government.
All right, I think the 508 piece is a really important piece, so thank you for bringing that up. What we're going to do now, I think, is move on to, we have a video that comes up next. So let me first thank our panelists, Betsy, Vincent, and Josh. You did an excellent job. Thank you very much. We lost Sam somewhere in here. I think he had a connection problem. He dropped out. But we thank him for his time as well. We appreciate everyone's help. And I'll turn this back over to Christian.
Oh, Christian.
This is on air. There he is.
I don't think it's Christian.
No.
I think it's going to the next speaker, not Christian or me.
Oh, okay. I'll turn it over to, because we have a video coming up next. Video is
probably
supposed to come from Brian, right?
Reed.
Brian Reed.
Welcome to this ATARC session, How to Deliver NIAP-Compliant Mobile Apps Faster. I'm Brian Reed, the Chief Mobility Officer at NowSecure, and I'll be your presenter today. NowSecure has been on a mission to save the world from unsafe mobile apps for more than a decade, and we work with civilian, commercial businesses, as well as federal agencies such as the Department of Defense, and more specifically BSPIN. And around NIAP, we're going to talk about that relationship. Now, NowSecure delivers software and services to help organizations automatically test and secure and really ensure the security and privacy of the mobile apps they build and the mobile apps they use, wherever they come from, however they're deployed to the enterprise. If we look at the typical agency today, they can have thousands of users and apps, and in fact, tens of thousands of devices as well, Whether it's agency staff, citizenry, or suppliers, the challenge becomes how to enable mobile access to systems, how to leverage commercial software, custom developed applications, and all the rest in a safe and secure way at scale. The first step of addressing the security and privacy issue is to have a certification standard. NIAP is a global independent organization that has established a series of standards for security around many different technology capabilities, systems, back-end networks, and so on and so forth. And more specifically, a few years ago, NIAP created the mobile app vetting specification, and today, NIAP version 1.3 specifies 51 requirements for mobile app vettings. And so organizations should seek to leverage NIAP, and they need an easy-to-use automated approach in order to test these applications and achieve ATO at scale. When we look across federal agencies, the DoD, for example, in 2017 specified that NIAP mobile app vetting must be used for the evaluation of mobile apps and the reevaluation of mobile app updates. And so this set a basis for technical evaluation by authorizing officials. The challenge then became, well, how do we go ahead and address this? And in fact, NIAP has fantastic benefits around security and data protection and really brings confidence to the organization. However, there's real challenges. It's long and time-consuming, costly, expensive, and requires expertise. And as a result, in that 3 or 4 year period of time, there are only really 2 NIAP-certified mobile apps today, and that's a real challenge. And so Now Secure partnered with the Air Force and specifically the B-Spin team to create an automated solution that would enable self-compliance, self-assessment of mobile applications in a repeatable, consistent, and fast fashion. And so if we look at the traditional approach to NIAP self-assessment for NIAP compliance, it's really a manual process of manually testing for the 51 requirements. The certifier or the self-assessment person must be a technical expert in mobile application security testing and NIAP, and in fact, even in testing techniques. It's really long and slow and tedious. And then once you've done all the testing, then you in turn need to actually craft the ATO documentation and reports and submit them. For most organizations, this can take weeks and months to complete. An alternative option, of course, is to use third-party accredited lab. That will cost a substantial sum of money and will take a substantial amount of time to just complete one test. And if an application gets updated, you've got to come back and do it again. And so that's one of the reasons probably that we only really have 2 officially certified applications. And so in partnering with the B-Spin team and the Air Force, what we've done is we've created an automated system, repeatable, consistent, automated testing that now enables an application to move into the test bed. Now Secure provides automated security testing and in phase 1 delivers security report details of where all vulnerabilities are within the application that then the development and security teams can partner on to address and fix. And then from that completed security test, then flip into the NIAP testing mode where the NIAP evaluator then moves through the content, evaluates each of the 51 criteria, chooses pass, fail, then automatically generates a report that's ready and pre-formatted to go into the ATO. So all of this dramatically collapses time and enables organizations to deploy these critical applications faster. So to use the NIAP solution is very straightforward. It's upload a binary into the Now Secure engine. The Now Secure engine will provide an automated test pass in about 15, 20, 30 minutes on that application. It will provide security report and it will provide a NIAP report. And then the NIAP evaluator can work their way through the interactive reporting to select their criteria, approve it, complete it, generate PDF, and they're done. So now what effectively has happened is a 90 to 180 day process that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars has collapsed into a few hours a day, maybe 2 days worth of work, which is a dramatic gain for any organization seeking NIAP compliance. Now let's take a quick look at some of the assessment results. And there's 51 different tests, but here we can see, for example, testing for cryptographic key generation. Here we see inventorying the use of third-party libraries, which may or may not expose risk or have approval requirements within your organization. Here we see network connection. So because dynamic testing is being run in the environment, right, all the network communications are traced. You can see all the IP endpoints, the geographic countries they talk. Want to make sure they don't go to China or Russia or what have you. And of course, looking at encryption of sensitive data, and here we can actually see in this particular one, we've captured that username, password, and other private information or sensitive information has been shared in an unencrypted fashion over the air, which is terrible as well. So using this approach then allows an automated system to really address 3 common NIAP use cases. So an on-demand model, so at any time an agency or an agency's partner can upload and run the on-demand testing, work through the interactive evaluator, and complete things. But what's really great, because of the full automation built into the system, you can actually run it in a DevSecOps cycle. So now the second use case is Cice Integration. So plug into the Jenkins and the Jira, test every build every day for the security requirements, then move into the evaluator mode. And in fact, this DevSecOps path is really moving down that ideal goal many organizations have, including BSpin, of getting to a continuous ATO model where the process itself is certified, not just the individual applications. Now, the last common use case is really mobile risk management across the entire mobile application portfolio. So by plugging into an MDM infrastructure, the entire application portfolio can be uploaded and analyzed for all the devices connected to the MDM across the entire network. That could be thousands of apps and thousands of devices. Analyze those, define the risk level, blacklist, whitelist, graylist, what's necessary, and then continuously monitor the app stores. And every time a new app release goes out or a new version goes out or a new app is detected, the system can automatically analyze. And now you're talking about massively scalable approach, whether it's on-demand, DevSecOps moving towards continuous ATO, or continuous monitoring of app stores and an entire deployment of all iOS and Android mobile devices, MDM connected to the enterprise. So you can learn more about this solution set by checking in with NowSecure in our booth here at the ATARC event, or you can contact us online or directly. What we're really trying to do is help raise the bar of security and enable agencies to ensure the highest level of protection by leveraging NIAP, which is the pinnacle of security compliance, but doing it in an automated fashion, a continuous fashion, an easy-use fashion that enables an organization to actually take advantage of all the great things of the specification while protecting their agency.